19th century Europe saw the rise of three main movements: nationalism, liberalism, and conservatism. Each group wanted different things. Every nationalist, liberal, and conservative thought he knew what was best for his country, whether he was a peasant in the French Revolution, a German merchant, or the Prince of Austria. In this podcast, I'll explain the main concepts, challenges, and connections between nationalism, liberalism, and conservatism. Nationalism was born in the chaos of the French Revolution. People of all walks of life united to fight an unjust and extravagant monarchy. The only force that could unite people of all social and political levels was nationalism. A nation is composed of citizens joined by common culture, customs, language, and history. Nationalism was the most potent movement of the 19th and 20th centuries in Europe. Ireland, Germany, Poland, Italy, Hungary, and the Balkans were all empowered to create nations rather than countries. All of the 6 major areas typically shared the same goals, such as unifying under one government and overthrowing any foreign control. Nationalists thought ethnicity should be the basis for political unity. An issue soon arose, however, as to who would be part of the United Nation. Minorities and small ethnic groups found it difficult to be included and had a harder time achieving independence. Nationalists often united under the country's culture, which was being revived through historians and writers. The Grimm brothers, for example, had a huge influence on Germany with their collections of fairy tales. Another major factor of unification was religion. Polish nationalists compared Poland to Jesus Christ, saying that it would experience a new life after being resurrected. Giuseppe Mazzini, an outspoken politician and journalist, emphasized the divine impact on nationalism. He was known as the beating heart of Italy. He wrote about how a nation is the creation of God, and it is the responsibility of the citizens to follow through with the mission planned out for them. Improvement of a nation is only possible when its people are united under one set of beliefs and goals. Mazzini said, "God has given your country as cradle and humanity as mother. You cannot rightly love your brethren of the cradle if you love not the common mother." Schools began teaching vernacular languages, helping to unite the people with a pure national language. The movement also spread to students. In Germany, college students formed nationalist groups known as Burschenschaften. They strived to replace old provinces with a new united German state. After a member named Karl Sand assassinated a conservative dramatist, the Congress of Vienna dissolved the Burschenschaften with the Carlsbad Decrees in July 1819. With their newfound identity, nationalists seemed ready to fight. Greece and Serbia both had successful revolutions against the Ottoman Empire. In the Greek Revolution of 1821, Russia, France, and England lent their aid to Greece. The Russian military gained control of the Ottoman Empire in 1828. In 1830, the Second Treaty of London granted Greeks their independence. Serbians were inspired by Europe and gained independence from the Ottomans in 1830. European nationalism also stirred revolts in many Latin American countries. Leaders Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín established strong armies and later new governments for the liberated nations. Haiti, Brazil, Venezuela, Rio de la Plata, and San Martín are just a few examples of revolutionary nations. While Latin American nationalists found great success in their revolutions, major victories in Europe were harder to come by. One of the greatest challenges nationalists had to face was the ultra-conservative Congress of Vienna, the most powerful political body in Europe. The Congress never failed to stop any form of revolt. Nationalists were greatly opposed to the Vienna settlement, partly because they were against direct monarchies. Nationalists usually supported popular sovereignty. The Vienna settlement also established new borders and gave the main powers even more control. Nationalism and liberalism were similar in some ways. They were able to feed off of each other since both were anti-conservative and shared goals such as representative government and economic freedom. Liberalism was still nearly the opposite of nationalism in many respects. A liberal at this time was anyone who threatened the existing social, political, or religious orders. Liberals were educated upper-middle-class citizens, like business owners and merchants. They were often excluded from politics but found great power in numbers. Unlike nationalists, liberals didn't believe an ethnic majority should be the basis of government. Though they believed in the power of the individual, they did not support democracy because they didn't think everyone should have the right to vote. They hated both the aristocratic elite and lower classes. Instead, liberals wanted equal representation and popular sovereignty. They wanted to use written constitutions to achieve these goals. Liberal ideas, such as religious tolerance and freedom of the press, were derived from the Enlightenment. Economic ideas were greatly influenced by Adam Smith. Thomas Malthus and David Ricardo were also prominent in liberal economic theory. Malthus wrote about the dangers of population growth. He said, "The power of population is indefinitely greater than the power in the earth to produce subsistence for men." Ricardo developed the theory of comparative advantage and felt a nation should only focus on industries that would be most internationally competitive and profitable through trade. Since liberals were typically manufacturers, they sought to remove government restraints linked to mercantilism. They wanted to produce their goods freely and trade without international barriers. Liberal programs differed in each country. In Great Britain and France, for example, many individual liberties had already been secured, and the monarch's power was limited. In Germany, liberals were more lenient of monarchical power because all they wanted was unification. Like nationalists, liberals faced the challenges of the conservative order. Liberal groups were very limited because their desired form of government was not in effect anywhere in Europe. In Russia, secret societies were formed by soldiers exposed to the Enlightenment and Revolution while in France. In the Decembrist revolt of 1825, the Moscow regiment refused to swear an oath of allegiance to the new Tsar. Instead, they called for a new government with a constitution. Tsar Nicholas ordered the cavalry to attack, and over 60 were killed. While the revolution itself was a failure, it was the first modern Russian rebellion with specific political goals. While nationalism and liberalism gained widespread popular support in Europe, conservatism overpowered both groups. The goals of conservatism were simple: repel all other movements and protect legitimate monarchies. Monarchs, aristocrats, and churches were all part of the conservative force in Europe. The Church was fearful of popular movements and vehemently against the Enlightenment, whose rational thinking undermined the Church. Aristocrats wanted to keep their old privileges and prevent revolution from easily spilling over the borders of surrounding countries. Conservatives felt they could not be safe with the representative government being called for by national and liberal groups. They associated liberal constitutions with the French Revolution. Since conservatism was the only truly established system in Europe, it was easier for them to resist change and challenges. They tried to restrict individual freedoms in order to prevent radical groups from speaking against them. The Congress of Vienna enforced conservatism in Europe. Prince Clement von Metternich of Austria, Viscount Castlereagh of Britain, and Tsar Alexander I of Russia were all prominent figures in the Congress. The real leader was Metternich. Metternich persuaded the Congress to issue the Carlsbad Decrees. When speaking of the university student outbreaks, he declared, quote, "The greatest and consequently the most urgent evil now is the press." Austria controlled Italy and the German Confederation because of the Vienna Settlement, placing both under limiting and hated conservative governments. Regarding his territory, Metternich said, "Italy is only a geographical expression." The Congress of Vienna was always opposed by nationalists and liberals, but it always managed to halt their success and prevail. In 1820, the Congress reversed the temporary successes of Spain and Naples. Both had fought for their independence and had new constitutional governments at their fingertips. Through the Protocol of Treptow, nationalist success was reversed, and the countries returned to their previous governments. Uprisings were also suppressed in Germany, as I mentioned, and in Prussia by Frederick William III. Tsar Alexander I had worked to fight liberalism and nationalism in Russia and across Europe. His successor, Nicholas I, crushed the Decembrist revolt. All three movements were powerful in their own ways. Even though no European revolution had been successful in a major country, liberal and nationalist ideas spread and challenged the conservative domestic order. The spirit of nationalism and liberalism never disappeared, despite the efforts of conservatives. Belgium, France, and Great Britain all accepted political change around the 1830s, taking on liberal forms of government. The people were beginning to take the fate of their countries into their own hands and define the character of their nations. As the 19th century drew on, Europe had even more political change on the horizon.